I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. I'm down here editing, and that means I have a little time to kill. When you're editing, you have to wait for things. The computer has to load and upload and load things to the channel. So there's some time that you just don't have anything to do. Now normally I would go over and work on something on the bench, but when you're doing one of these short edits, you got like 5 or 10 minutes in between. So I thought, okay, I'll talk about something. Also, I'll drink a little coffee. One of the things that I do while I'm waiting for the video to load is I'll watch other people's videos. There's a guy named Wesley Treat who I just got started watching his videos. He's kind of funny and he's an interesting fellow. One of the things that he did is he made up a welding bench. He took a piece of 1/4-inch plate steel and had a local vendor burn holes in it with a laser. So he's got this really nice welding table. So he's doing a lot of projects on his welding table, justifiably proud of it and happy to show off what it'll do. I was watching a video on how he made $4 welding clamps. It's quite interesting. I'll leave a link down there in the description. Anyways, in the comments, which I always read because I like finding out what people think, BP Punk Rock says, when I was in welding school, one of the welding areas, it got some water spilled on the welding table. I ended up putting my elbow in the water, which got my sleeve wet. I struck an arc with a TIG torch too far from the work and too close to the filler rod, which sent the electricity through my hand and down my elbow to the table. Yeah, it's interesting. It happens to you if you're a welder. Eventually, you're going to get stung. When I worked at the foundry, one of the things that I did was I welded. I was very good at it. When I was 14, I started welding, bought my first welder, and spent a lot of time welding things up, making stuff. So when I started at the foundry, I welded up the Wheelabrator. The Wheelabrator was a shot blast machine for cleaning castings. And Wheelabrators are hugely powerful pieces of equipment that are very hard on themselves. The shot blaster throws a shot at a high rate of speed at the steel walls of the blaster and eats holes in them. So when I turned 18 and went to work at the foundry, one of my first tasks was welding up the Wheelabrator. Now, Wheelabrators build up shot underneath them, little piles of steel shot. The steel shot is conductive. So between the steel shot and the frame of the Wheelabrator, you could actually build up a solid conductor out of steel shot. I was laying underneath the Wheelabrator with the stinger in my hand, and I went to change the rod and I got a tingle. I thought, well, what the world? I looked, I didn't have anything that I saw touching the ground on the Wheelabrator, but every time I went to put a rod in, I got a tingle. Turns out that I was laying in a steel shot pile. Some part of my body contacted the steel shot and grounded me out, so every time I touched that welding rod with my finger, I got a poke. That was kind of a funny thing that happened. It wasn't a really bad thing because up until you get 50 volts, you really don't feel much of a shock. You know, it's a tingle. And welders, even though they have high amperage, have low voltage. That's how you achieve high amperage. You step down the voltage and increase the amperage. Well, the tingle was kind of a pain. It wasn't really a hurt, but it was an annoying thing. Once I figured out why it was caused, I quickly learned to sweep out the shot from underneath the Wheelabrator when I was working in there. But before I did that, was working underneath the Wheelabrator, welding up vertical overhead. It's a real pain in the butt trying to get in there and weld up something that's hard to reach and overhead. So I'm in there welding, and I laid the stinger down. Not thinking, laid it right in the pile of shot. That stinger arced out to the pile of shot, passed through the pile of shot over to the frame of the Wheelabrator, and made a circuit. That's when things got interesting. That circuit went right underneath my shoulder, and it turned all that steel shot into a red hot bar of iron. Basically welded all the steel shot together. I only did that once. You remember that one. So that's my welding story, and that was triggered by Wesley Treat. The thing that I did yesterday was I went through a bunch of stuff that was multi-use tools. Okay, I have some. I know I kind of poo-poo them, but I have them. When you work maintenance and you're a manager, people give you things. They want you to buy their product. They want you to do something for them. They give you a present. One of the first things that I would get is a jackknife, because I'm a guy, and back in the 90s, jackknives were kind of a common thing to hand out. Well, I like jackknives, and since I like them, they tended to pile up. Now, it's not that they're a great sentimental value, although some of these were gifts, and I hardly ever throw away a gift. The usefulness of the tool doesn't have as much impact on me keeping it as the idea of where I got it from and who I got it from. We'll start out with the most common thing. Little Swiss Army knives. This one came from my brother Jerry. He owns Chatterton Trucking Company. And this was one of the giveaways that they did. The blade's never been sharpened. I carried it in my pocket for a while, just because it was kind of nice to think about Jerry every time I picked it up. This kind of jackknife is not really useful unless you're going to clean your fingers or file your nails. They'll do that. But because it came from my brother, it has stayed around. And it stays in this little bag, along with most everything else you're going to see here. I don't know where this one came from. I'm sure it was some salesman came through and gave me a jackknife. Still got the little tweezers, shear, fingernail file, and jackknife blade. And it goes back in the bag. This one I must not have carried because it's got the tweezer, but it's also got the toothpick. The only one out of the bunch that has a toothpick. Jackknife blade, scissors, fingernail file, tweezer, toothpick. This is the only one of the Stanley knife. This is the only one of the Swiss Army knives that's fully intact. That makes me think I didn't carry it much. Then you get into the kind of goofy knives. This one, you probably see more on late night TV shows than anything else. Those bad B movies. Yeah, it's a butterfly knife. Now, it's got a little clip to keep it together, and you're not going to see me flipping this thing around because it's too stiff and I don't want to cut my finger off. Oh my God, I've got a switchblade. It goes in the bag. This one I handed out as presents. Yeah, every year Christmas time I handed out gifts to the guys that worked for me. Sometimes they were cool, sometimes they were not. This is one of the not cool ones. It's a little jackknife and on a carabiner. It does have a locking blade. I don't think that's its best feature. Well, might be. Because I don't seem to have carried it, and I never use a carabiner. I know some guys like to clip them onto their belt, but I was usually wearing dress pants, and having a carabiner clipped onto my belt was not exactly cool. While I worked at United Technologies, I bought a lot of things. I ran into a lot of salespeople. I was buying steel and refractory and equipment and tools, just all kinds of stuff. Contractors came in and I had them do work on the building, so I met a lot of people. One of the people that I met was the salesman for Mittler Supply, and he gave me this little jackknife, which is one blade and a fingernail file and a money clip. Now, I've never carried a money clip, so this thing never got carried. Still in pretty good shape, but it lives in the little bag. Probably will be there at the estate sale. This jackknife must have belonged to my dad. I don't recall exactly where it came from, but Dad sharpened his jackknife with a grinder, and this one was sharpened with a grinder. Dad was not a finesse kind of guy. If it cut insulation on a piece of wire, it was good enough. He didn't spend a lot on a jackknife, so when it wore out, he tossed it. Imagine this one got either tossed and ended up in something I have, or it came along with some of the toolboxes that I got after he died. Anyways, it's from Dad, so I keep it. This one has a special place in my heart because it's from my loving wife Lydia. It says, "Your loving wife Lydia, 2/14/86." Has my initials on the back side. It's a very nice Swiss Army knife. Stainless steel frame on it. It has the shears, a small screwdriver blade, a small jackknife blade, a pair of tweezers, and I carried this for quite a while until the spring that held the scissors in place snapped. Then the scissors would no longer stay in place, and if I put it in my pocket, it tried to come out through the side of my pocket. So it ended up in the bag. I'm going to keep this one. As long as I am alive, I will have that jackknife. Or until somebody puts me in a home and takes my stuff, sells it at a garage sale. This is not a jackknife. This is a lighter. Belonged to my father-in-law. The way I can tell that, it's Oriskany or Orislany Waterbury felts since 1869. In North Carolina, some of you guys already know this, there were a lot of paper mills. And paper mills use something called felt. It's a felt sheet that they make the paper with. Don't know paper process, so you're just going to have to take it for what it is. Maybe some of you guys know more about it than I do. I'm sure you do. But this is a Zippo lighter. Zippo was, and still is, a very well-respected name in the lighter business. If you break a Zippo, they repair it. And this one belonged to my father-in-law, so I'm keeping it. This one belonged to a paper mill felt company too. This one I got from my mother-in-law when I said I needed a jackknife. Used to belong to my father-in-law. This one is a kind of multi-tool. It has a screwdriver blade on it, and it has a locking screwdriver blade. Got a little brass tab on there. So if you go to use the jackknife and you want to take this blade and scrape something with it or use it like a screwdriver, until you push that little brass piece in, the blade won't fold up. Very nice jackknife. It's a Barlow style, but it's a little bigger than the Barlows that they sell now. Got wooden scales on it, brass spacers between the springs and the scales. Very nice jackknife. This one is something that the salesman at United Technology. This one is something that the salesman at Douglas Auto Tech handed out, and we had a celebration of some kind for some reason. I forget what it was, and I was there, and they were handing these out and said, "Do you want one?" And I said, "Sure." So I now have a Douglas Auto Tech jackknife. About the only use I got for Douglas Auto Tech, because I don't like the company. I keep it. I had some friends that worked there at United Technologies. I had some friends that worked at Douglas Auto Tech. There might still be people working at Douglas Auto Tech that I know, but I'm not fond of the company. I still keep the box though, and the little jackknife in it. Just a reminder of what I did. This is from Monarch Metals. It's a little 3-bladed doohickey. Got a screwdriver blade, fingernail file, and a jackknife blade. Not exactly a great one, but holds sentimental value for me. This is an American Camper multi-tool. Not a high-dollar multi-tool. I don't know who American Camper was made by. It's got a little socket set that goes in the handle there and has blades in it, screwdriver bits. Bottle opener with a screwdriver blade on it, and a little tiny jackknife blade on it. So you could say that it's a multi-tool. It's not exactly a good one. This little jackknife was given to me by my grandfather Snyder. When the tip of the blade broke off, I put it away in the bag and said, not going to wear this one out because it belonged to Grandpa. This one is just a piece of junk. I don't know why I kept it. It's a fingernail trimmer. Got a can opener and a bottle opener and a file. And this blade, which is totally useless. But it still lives in the bag. This is another paper mill Feltz knife. Little 2-blade. It's given to me by my mother-in-law. Used to belong to my father-in-law, so I keep it. This is a fisherman's blade. It's got a fish scaler on the side of this blade here. It's got a beer bottle opener, which is always necessary if you're a fisherman. And this little part here is for removing hooks from a fish's mouth. You slide this down the line, and that little notch in the front there would catch the hook, and you shove it forward, pull the hook out of the fish's mouth. I never carried this one fishing. I don't know why I kept it. It's not a great knife. Not horrible, but it's not a great knife. It's just one of them that I kept around. This one I bought for a specific purpose so that I could use it. This is my knife for my sailboat. When I had the sailboat, I had visions of sailing the ocean. Biggest lake I ever sailed on was Coldwater Lake, down by Coldwater, Michigan. Had a little 22-foot McGregor. It's a nice sailboat. I liked it. Up until I hurt my back and couldn't raise the mast anymore, I really sailed that every summer. Kind of big to single hand, but I was in the yacht club races down at Coldwater Lake. Yacht club was the people that just had boats with sails on them. Got a jackknife blade. This is a wrench for working on chain links. Clevises. Clevises had a little flat spot on the end of the screw, so you could slip that over, and it was an adjustable thing because it just wrenched on anything that had a flat plate on it. And this was the marlin spike that you used to help untie knots and pick apart the end of the rope so that you could bind it. One of my favorites. One of the least useful things, but it was a gift so I kept it, is this little jackknife. One of the least useful things, but I kept it because it was a gift, is this little screwdriver. It has hex shank blades that go into that centerpiece, and you can use it as a kind of screwdriver. If you're ever lost on a desert island, don't want to have this be your only tool. But it does have a key ring on it, so you can clip it to things and not lose it very easily. And you can carry your keys. This is the jackknife that I use. I have a Schrade old timer that's a stainless steel jackknife that I carry when I'm going to nice places because it's small, fits in my pants pocket, doesn't make a big bulge. This one kind of freaks people out because, oh my God, it's a switchblade. No, it's not. It's a lock blade knife. The nice thing about it is you can flip that out and then flick it and it opens. If you're holding something in this hand and you want to cut something off of it, or you're hanging on to something and want to use your jackknife, you can hang on, open your jackknife, do what you need to do, then close the jackknife up and put it back in your pocket. or tool pouch or wherever you put it. This one has a belt clip. I never use a belt clip on a jackknife. It screws up the belt, and I just put them in my pocket. So that's enough stories for today. Thanks a lot for watching. If you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. And I do obviously have some multi-tools that I keep around.